Chanie Delman. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. And today on the show with us, we have Chanie Delman, and we're here to talk about the life cycle of a woman and what happens outside of the body, because we've done an episode with Dr. Alyssa Hellman on biology. Then we did pelvic floor health with Faggy Itzkowitz. And now we're going into outside of the body experience that happens throughout the woman's life cycle and the things that maybe women aren't prepared for, sort of think might happen, but when it hits them, it feels like a truck hit them. And I definitely want to touch upon burnout and everything that comes with that. So let's start the episode. Tell us a little bit about yourself professionally and religiously, just so we have an idea of who we're hearing from today.
Thanks again for having me on. I appreciate it. And you're putting out so many different topics and content. And so happy to share my experience as well. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I specialize in reproductive and maternal mental health. So my specialty is really infertility, family building, postpartum mood disorders, loss and bereavement are really most of my areas. And I also, I guess we would say, dabble in some addictions work, supporting spouses or partners of addicts as well. And I have a private practice in Queens and the Five Towns and virtual, like the rest of the therapists around these days. And in terms of my background, I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the beautiful Torski community. Very privileged to be part of that community. And my parents were pioneers of the community. They started the girls' high school, very involved. And I went on to, all my studies, seminary, college in New York, and now live in Queens with my family.
Is it a Chabad community that you grew up in?
No, so Torski is a Hasidic community, but we were very part of the Chabad community also. It's a small community, so everyone knows everyone in Milwaukee.
Thank you for that. Is there anything you'd like to preface before we start with the timeline of a woman's life? And I'm sure there's a lot that men can benefit from listening to this episode as well.
Yeah, I think people are going to just hear different things. And what I love about your topic is so many times in my practice, someone will come in so thrown off by just a stage that she's going through. And I'm always having this discussion with clients, with colleagues, with friends. Can we be doing more just to prepare for the regular, and for sometimes the life throws us what seemingly isn't regular, although we're seeing so much of the irregulars becoming regular. And with podcasts like yours and more awareness, we're talking about things we didn't talk about before. So I think honoring that space of every woman is going to go through transition, and how you go through it, what supports you need around you, what internal grounding you need, tools, skills, all of that.
And what's happening and almost knowing that it's going to happen. So when it happens, it's not like big surprise. Nobody told you. Nobody told me. I didn't sign up for this.
Right. It's a hard one because, I have this discussion with, particularly because this is what I work so much with, infertility and then loss, miscarriage, and postpartum. So those are more specifics. So should we have that discussion? Should every OBGYN have a little bit more, hey, you might not get pregnant right away? Should college teachers give a little bit more heads up of intimacy might not work right away and you might need intervention or you might need help? Or should the OBGYN say, okay, wow, great, you're pregnant, just so you know, 1 in 4 miscarry. So all of these things are, or even let's just take something as simple as just getting married. Just by the way, you're super excited, it's amazing. Marriage is a huge adjustment. It might be really hard. Or things just I was just talking to my friend, I'm using it as an example. Many of my friends are marrying off kids now. Big transition. It's having a podcast about marrying off your kids. And it's taking them a lot of time to process it, to give space for it. Sure, we'll get into those different things. So we need to be able to just talk about these different things, but also not scare people, right? We are living in difficult times, hardship among Klal Yisrael, things we could have never expected before. So I think in general, the atmosphere is that. And so these are just kind of little more awareness, more nuances, more support we could be giving in the different transitions of life.
That's a great introduction. So should we start with marriage or maybe dating? I would say that's the first stage of life. You don't have a formal education anymore. And we established that formal education doesn't provide all the education you need anyhow. But we'll start here anyway.
Yeah. I give a lot of props to the Frum community. I think there's so much trying, effort, programs, attempted programs. You know, I just had a conversation with a marital coach last night. I just ran into her. She goes, I'm trying to institute. I'm like, great, institute, go for it. Try to have just a little bit more that we are offering. So with girls that are dating, why does it have to be always when it comes to just a problem that they're running to a dating coach? Could there be a little bit more done in, you know, and I love the high schools that do in 12th grade a class on dating and marriage. In seminary, being able to just talk about it more, being able to talk about maybe it's not going to go so smooth. Maybe you're not going to get married that first year you get off the plane from seminary. And again, it's this balance. We don't want to kind of create, okay, everything's going to be really bad. Let me tell you about all worst case scenarios. We want to hold space for this is great, amazing, exciting time, but also there could be roadblocks along the way because there is this, sometimes I'm kind of almost like shocked when a client will come in so shocked by her difficult experience. Like I could never have imagined. And so I think we could just be doing a little, not that it's not difficult. I'm not taking that away. You have a lot of empathy. It's hard to be single when you see your friends getting married, when your friends are then having babies, when, you know, you used to be getting so many dates and you're not getting so many dates. Those are really difficult times and hard. But could we have preempted it a little bit more? Could we just talk about it a little bit more? That it's not always done deal so quickly.
And I can add to it, you can expect, even though it won't be that first year maybe or the second year, but let's say you're in your third year of dating and you're like, I never thought I'd get here. You're still super young and you still have so much you could be doing without feeling like you're old and focusing on your own personal career, self-development. You know, your own life is valuable outside of building a family.
And I think that's such an important point that I do a lot of work in. How can you stay in the here and now? How can you stay in the present of what's going on around your life? Enjoy that part of it. You know, I'm always amazed when like girls are like traveling together and hiking together and like do, you know, like be in school and do, and also then be dating. And for sure, your focus should be on getting married. So I think it's just like holding, like you'll hear me use this a lot, just holding space for both.
Holding space for both. Okay, is there anything else we need to address in the dating aspect?
So I think one other thing I would say is, and this is a common theme in many of these transitions and many of the things that happen, that question that comes up, is there something wrong with me? Like, am I doing something wrong? Is there something wrong with me? Am I defective? And that's very common theme and it's painful in women's health, in infertility, in miscarriage. But I also think it comes up in like, why am I not getting married? Like, what's wrong with me? And so I kind of advise both, meaning look and see what is my part in this. I'd be getting more coaching from a dating coach. And is anyone giving me feedback I'm not listening to? Can I push Chanem and say, hey, was there any feedback you could give me? We would be doing a disservice to our girls if we weren't telling them, hey, in a kind, gentle way, this, or you came across to this, so that they can say, I am doing everything I'm doing. So are you looking at what your part is in this? And then also just the work of like, I'm in this place, not the easiest, but I'm doing everything I can. Am I calling Shachanim? Am I putting myself out there? Those type of things.
And can you address dating coaches for a minute? Is that something that you would default to if anyone is struggling through this stage of life? Or do you have to have specific problems to recommend a dating coach for?
So that's an interesting thought, even in therapy. So I don't know that I can speak so on the dating coach end, but even in therapy, do I have to have something wrong to go into therapy, or do I just want to talk things through and work on myself? I really think it could be both in the dating coaching as well. Just going, if you are stuck at a point, going through and kind of like, hey, is everything that you're hearing sound okay and sound right? Can I bounce some things off of you that's happened on a date? Am I taking it the wrong way? How am I interpreting it? So I wouldn't say it's a requirement. I think it could be beneficial if there's this place where you feel like maybe something's not working or maybe I'm stuck. But then again, being cautious, that message is like, there may not be anything wrong with you. This might just be, like we're from here, right? We can get from, it may be an imuna, like your guy's not ready yet. He's in law school. He has another 2 years to go. Sorry. Like that's a hard piece.
So let's go into the next stage of life.
An adjustment to marriage. They would say that, right? So we found this great guy, we're married, and I don't, we'll put out adjusting to marriage is hard, but is it talked about enough? Is it prepped enough? Can we give girls more skills and couples? Let's just say couples, because my background is in couples therapy for the last 25 years, and I've done a lot of work in that. Could we be giving more room for adjustment period, getting to know each other, communication skills? And so, yeah, there's that question. Should they all be required to go to premarital counseling? That would be wonderful. Can we get them all into, I think it's Shalom workshops, 5 workshops on communication? That would be great. Like, I strongly encourage those all the time to anyone I'm working with, just because why not? Why not put more out on the table? Why not put your foot forward? Why not work through things, kind of preempting any potential?
Setting a foundation for a new life, new financial life, new everything life.
Yeah, it's very new. It's very different. And that spouse is coming from a totally different place. Like, that's so huge. We just don't, like, he did what? Well, yeah, he was raised by different parents. That makes sense. And making a little bit, like, it kind of makes sense that you guys aren't going to be exactly.
So let's give some examples.
I think finances can be just like a really easy example. How they grew up, what they spent on, values, spending very easily versus being very rigid. And then you can see that play out in the couple in the sense that, like, he's controlling, or he's, I'm like, well, maybe he just grew up like that, like it doesn't always have to be. And because they grew up different with different ideas or different ways they were raised, this one only puts things on credit cards and this one only spends cash. It sounds like a simple thing, but then you like question it, like, wait, so that communication piece and that understanding each other and learning the differences, like, hey, how did you do it growing up and how did you do it growing up? That would be like an easy, lighter example, I would say.
Okay, and what's a less light?
Like a heavier one. What I see, I guess, it's kind of taking a different turn here, but what I see is the ability for couples to really be able to be selfless and be able to look at their spouse and say, what does he need? Or what does she need? Or what are they asking of me? And can I be flexible? Like, can I be flexible? Can I not care that much? Can I say, this isn't a big deal? And I don't say those words very lightly. There are things that people need to be careful about, don't feel good. I'm like, oh, let it go, let it go. It's not all that approach I take, but more from I would say like a character trait, like if we're talking about midos. Can I be a mavater? Can I say, you know what? My husband wants to do this.
Could you give examples? Like, because it's not helpful if it's theoretical. So you could say, like,
sure.
These are the 3 things you want to be flexible on, and these are the 3 things you don't want to be flexible about.
Right. So I have like in parenting, we talk about like the 80-20 rule. I do like a 9 out of 10 rule. If I can say yes, no problem, yes, no problem, yes, no problem, yes, no problem, then that 10th thing is kind of important to me. So I don't like to, I'm careful. I want to give examples, but I'm careful not to impose on people examples, because I think they really need to tap into their, what I call my truth, right? So that's just me quieting all the outside noise. And really, does this feel okay for me? So we could talk about having dairy or meat that night for dinner, or doing the takeout, or spending the money on the babysitter, or no, or how we raise the kids. No, I don't want to let him go there. I'm not letting him get the cell phone. I'm letting him get the cell phone. We're going to your parents. We're not going to your parents. As many times as someone can say, you know what? This is important for my marriage. I want to do this for my marriage. I want to gift him this. I would say keep it coming. But then there might be things that, let's use intimacy as an example, that it doesn't feel comfortable. I can't. I don't want to. And being able to say, it doesn't work for me right now. Let's talk about this more. Versus, no, I can do this for you now. I'm kind of tired, but I want to show up for you, husband. And that's, again, in the context of a healthy, safe relationship.
So, do you want to address infertility a little bit and loss before we go into little children? And then you could also address the infertility and loss while having little children.
Yeah. So hard. So this one's close to my heart because I just work with women. This is my everyday work. And the adjustment and the within the couple, within the family context, within the woman of like, wait a second, I thought it was supposed to go. I was supposed to, and it should. And giving space for women that it doesn't always. You might need intervention. You may need support. You may need help. And that's just like, let's say, any medical condition. You didn't do this, you didn't ask for this, you didn't cause a miscarriage, you didn't cause a loss. There's nothing defective in you. And supporting women around that and normalizing that, I'm amazed by the firm community. There's many organizations that support infertility and loss and postpartum. So if there's organizations supporting it, that means it's happening to many women. Somebody asked me recently, like, well, so how do we break that stigma? I'm like, we're doing it. We're talking about it. We're saying that it happens and allowing women to get the right resources, the couple to get the help. When I have a woman who comes in postpartum depression, I'll get the husband in their second or third session. Bring in your husband. Let's just talk about what's going on. Let's educate him. Let's normalize that my wife isn't like, yikes, what just happened? We're only married 9 months. We just had a baby and then this. And so all those transitions just need a little bit more space, understanding, compassion, just infertility, being able to give, how does one navigate sharing with the family, not sharing with the family, privacy versus we're very, very beautifully tsanua, modest community. And so we don't talk a lot about these things. We may not talk about when things are going wrong. And that runs the gamut in the communities. I work a lot with the Hasidic community as well. Things are very quiet and we don't talk about. And so when there's something that's not working or that's going on or something we need help for, can we approach someone with real sensitivity? And if I'm going through it myself, can I get the help I need? With just being able to be a little bit more open, I need help here.
Would you say anyone who experiences loss or infertility can use or should access the help support out there? Or are there people who don't need it?
I wouldn't know because I'm with the people who are accessing the support. I think there is an array of beautiful support, and support looks very different. Some people may benefit from a support group. Some people may benefit from individual therapy. Some just may benefit from the information. So I think that message becomes, you're not going through this alone. You shouldn't have to. It's very difficult. Each of these things individually. And so, tap into this beautiful community and these beautiful organizations. I myself am part of, besides for my practice, I volunteer for Kinafayim, which supports infancy and miscarriage loss. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful organization. A-Time, Boneo. Like there's no shortage of help out there. And so if you can, access it.
And what about postpartum depression? I know we've dedicated at least one full episode on that. Anything we just want to throw out here so we're not skipping over an important?
Yeah, there's so many of my colleagues. I know you've had Reinventing on, and we talk about this also. There's PSI, Postpartum Support International, and I think the From communities as well are doing more trainings, online, in-person trainings. I know just even in my community in the yeshiva, I came in a few years ago to speak about, okay, what does this look like? What's going to happen? Here are the warning signs. And so again, as much education as we're giving is as much then as the communities and the people will be able to access. Oh, this happens to women. This happens to many women. Can we talk about it? And then where can I get the support for it? Medication, therapy, support, all of the above.
It reminds me of an event that Bor Enten actually did with the Oetzet initiative here in our community. Even if it's not for you, if whoever's listening to it doesn't have postpartum depression, or let's say you're a man, this information gives you the awareness to notice it in someone else, or even to say, hey, how are you doing? Or how are you sleeping? Or how can I support you? And just having your eyes open as a good Samaritan, you can help somebody who doesn't have access to this information or even capacity to get this information.
Yeah. And I think that line is so, I mean, I'm the therapist in it, so I'll always say, but even someone like, we have a new baby, it's amazing. Wow. It's so hard to have a new baby. Like, I'll say that, I'll just put it out there. It's so hard to have a new baby. So that I'll see like her face just kind of like, yeah, I'm like, you're probably not sleeping. It's so hard. And like, such an adjustment, and the nursing and the this. And there's so much adjustment, postpartum depression, putting that aside, just having a baby, it's so huge. And can we just support more than just the meal train, right? Like, which is beautiful. But can we do more supporting and like, what can I do for you?
Speaking of, being hit by a truck with a new transition and new stage, let's talk about some of the things people are usually not prepared for, and it's impossible to fully be prepared for. But like, what are some obvious things that anyone should know?
For a new baby, they require so much. I don't think anyone could really prepare you for how much a baby needs, how much you're actually giving. And I use in my work this idea of like emotional energy tank. And so through the day, when I wake up in the morning, depending on how much sleep I had, I go through the day and like, this one needs Ema, and this one needs me and my clients. And then, I have that appointment. And so my energy is being taken. Babies take almost like consume 75% within like an hour. So the crying can be draining on a mom. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing with a new, like, I don't know what I'm doing. New moms, and then moms who have a baby that's very different than the first few, right? Like, what do I do? What do I do? That babies can't communicate to us what they actually need is very overwhelming. It's a lot. I think a lot is also the very many opinions from well-meaning people and the different theories on. So I'll just like use the sleep training as like an example. There are many different approaches to sleep training, and there are many different people's opinions on sleep training. And as a new mom, you will see and hear from many, and kind of just, I want to say trust yourself, but if I don't know what I'm doing, how can I trust myself? So it's just kind of like, be kind and gentle to yourself that this is really new and you're learning it. In the hospitals, you're required to watch a very quick video on don't shake your baby. But why am I not given a full year's course on how to raise this baby, right? And what to do? And I don't know, they just bit me and then they just did this. And nursing working, not working. What if I choose not to nurse? What if I can't nurse? The stigma around that. So I just listed a bunch, an adjustment, and like, just again, being okay with that.
If I can add just the expectation of being sleep deprived and how it's just everything is harder when you're sleep deprived. Making a decision is harder when you're sleep deprived. Making it somewhere on time and remembering every item you need when you're sleep deprived is harder, and you're probably going to forget a thing. I remember the first time I packed out of the house, my oldest was a week old. We were going away for Shavuos. It took us 3 hours to pack into the car and get out of the house. 3 hours of like, oh, and we need this and we need that and we need that. And then we had to buy things when we got there because we realized we needed this and we needed that.
Yeah.
So just very hard to just figure things out when your brain is just not working.
And it's thank you for bringing that up. It's like one of the number one things, I assess 3, like, what's your sleeping like? What's your eating like? What's your exercise like? What's going on? And sleep is not a nice thing to have. It's a necessity for functioning. And so, if you're waking up every 2 to 3 hours to feed baby, if baby's not sleeping through the night for potentially months, potentially over a year, kind of back to that sleep training, then you wake up in the morning, kind of going back to that energy tank thing, you may be on 50% in the morning, maybe less. So I'm very much the same. My sleep is super duper critical to me. And I'm like, those first months were always, always very hard. It just like I needed my sleep and I couldn't always get it.
And the expectation to just be back to normal and ready to work 6 weeks later, or even to be a proper mother to your other kids when you're sleep deprived. It just feels like an impossible task. Maybe we could segue into that topic of accessing SSRIs and how that is a tool that many, many women are using just to cope with the lifestyle. And I'll use the language that Fagi Itzkowitz brought up on the pelvic floor therapy episode, the baby marathon, the running the baby marathon, which is, it's not a sprint where it's just, 1, 2 kids. This is your lifestyle for the next, XYZ years as a frum mother. And I think many women need outside help, whether it's physical outside help, and sometimes it's psychological. I know there's a lot of Adderall and then antidepressants just to get through the basics. Okay, I'll let you take it away.
So, disclaimer, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't prescribe. I'm going to kind of take a step back and just look at it more of the support needed. And I think that's more critical. For one person, it might need medication. I'll just really quickly, please be seen by someone who is a psychiatrist, a medical doctor who is very comfortable prescribing, and not just, I can just get something somewhere. You really need to be assessed if this is obviously a proper medication that you need and can benefit from. And so, many women do need extra help in falling asleep, in bringing their anxiety down. You're talking more about just like within the norm. Obviously, in postpartum depression or anxiety, we have to treat that very specifically as well. But I think the support needed is critical. This baby, I love that baby marathon. What do I need to put in place? And at each transition, that will look very different. So, and in our, let's say, lectures or education on postpartum depression and anxiety, we'll talk about just the support. What does the support look like? So even if someone doesn't have postpartum depression or anxiety and they're just having babies, they need more help. They need more cleaning help. They need more babysitting. They need more takeout. And I always say to a client, I don't want to impose what you need, but let's look at what you do need. If you need more sleep, can you get a girl in the later afternoon to come watch the kids while you rest? So I think we live in a beautiful, giving community that a lot of people can access more. Kind of going back to what you were saying before, there's an expectation that I should just have it together. And if I'm walking down the street and everyone looks like, right, I always give this example, like, why are girls coming to their own baby's breasts in heels? Why? Can I take your heels for you, please? Right? This expectation that I should be doing great and I should look good. And I'm like, I'm in pain watching you in heels. Some people can do it, some people can't. And I had many I did not wear heels to. And then one I was actually able to wear heels to. And I'm like, I actually felt okay too. So we can't know and judge what's going on, and being really careful not to compare ourselves, and know that most likely everyone's having an adjustment. I'm not even going to say hard time, an adjustment. Right? I think that's just like it's an adjustment. Everyone will deal with adjustments differently.
I know we're skipping over things and it's impossible to get to everything. And this is something you can apply to the next child, or just figuring out where can I use more support and how do I get it. So next we go into teenage kids.
Yeah. I just think raising kids. So this is if someone wants to take this project on, you could give me credit and then we'll talk about it later. I would love to see, like if you could say, you can make one change in the Jewish community, I would make many. But one thing I think we are missing is there's so much of it, but not maybe direct enough. Like every single parent who puts their child into pre-1A is required to take a year-long parenting course given by the school. Like, wouldn't that be amazing? Because parenting is hard. It changes by different generations. Different children have different temperaments. Raising kids is, again, an adjustment, something I need to learn. I know some of your talks were on different backgrounds, how you were raised. So if you were raised in a beautiful, loving, amazing house, then you probably had some good role models as parents. But if there were dysfunction, difficulties, all of that, mental illness, and you really didn't know or learn how to parent. And so I'm a big advocate of parenting classes, and I basically tell everyone, you will need to take one sometime in your course of being a parent. You may want to take 2 or 3. I've taken 5. I've read over 40 parenting books. I'm still trying to figure it all out, trying to find what works for you, learning new techniques. And even that, no one really knows how exactly what works, what doesn't. And so giving yourself, space, time, kindness, a lot of communication. Just want to not leave out the husbands in these conversations. Couples communicate, talking, having a mentor, having a Rav that they're asking questions to. All of those things are included in the umbrella of parenting. And then for sure, we'll all get escalated when parenting a teenager.
So what are the things to be aware of or prepared for when you have teenagers, raising kids, growing kids?
So it's so great. That's such a great question. I think even more so in the parenting realm, learn about teenagers. There's no shortage of amazing content and books out there about what an adolescent is, their development, what they're going through physically, emotionally, spiritually. That would be one piece I would say is just so critical, so that when that teenager walks through your house storming through and you're all like, right, you get all like, what do I do? Like, you can normalize a lot of the behavior and you can identify if there's behavior to be concerned about. And I think this doesn't start in teenage, but I think it's kind of like extra important. You're starting it from when they're infants. That what does your relationship look like with your child? What is my connection to my child? How do I relate to my child? How do I feel about my child? I have a lot of those discussions with many, many parents and many moms. Maybe something about that child is triggering or hard for them, or they have the same character defects they had. And it's like, oh my gosh, right? And so really knowing, understanding, learning about your kids and teenagers is really important. And knowing that it's like no one's getting it 100%. Like, it's just impossible. Like, there's no perfect out there. But am I trying? Am I putting in effort? One other critical point is the outcome isn't yours. We don't control the outcome. We cannot create how this child will succeed. Sarah Hannah Radcliffe has in her book a beautiful what's in my control, what's not in my control in the parenting realm. I can be kind to this child. I can role model to this child. I can discipline this child. But I don't have any of the results. I cannot predict them. And I think that letting go of control is really so much of the work we're always doing in any of these areas.
If I could add 2 more things, and yes. I don't have the expertise, the experience, or credibility that you have, I would say number 1 is every child is a massive financial addition to the family. For some reason, I think people don't think about that, or they think I don't have to deal with that for the first 2 years, but you are hit with bills the second, even in pregnancy, a new baby is a new mouth to feed. Let's just put it like that. And then obviously tuition, when that kicks in, your health insurance as a family will go up. You might want to look into getting life insurance.
So will their car insurance when they get their license.
And another aspect of raising kids is that as a child, you don't choose, your siblings, your parents. But once you're an adult, you are choosing who you marry, hopefully, your roommates, until you got married. Your children, you didn't choose them. And as they grow up, they are people in your personal space who may not be going to sleep. I've heard parents talk about how, at least you have your nights when your kids are little. You put them to bed, you have a line I use on my kids is like, after 7, I'm not mommy. I'm just Frady and I'm hanging out and I'm not available as mommy. You want to do things, go do them on your own. Mommy's finished. So as kids grow up, you don't have your mornings if you have little kids and big kids, and the big kids are not going to sleep. My plan for that is to go to sleep before they go to sleep, so I don't have to deal with that part of the night. My mother did that. They might do things that annoy you. They might smell or hygienically not be up to your par. I know people have, when they're dealing with sons, especially, and the teenage years and all the odor that comes with that. So yeah, it's a big physical infringement. And we did an episode on what if you hate your child. I know it's a very extreme title of an episode with Geli Osofsky. So you might not even like the personality of your child. I'm throwing that out there. You can carry on.
I'm just gonna reiterate a few of those things that were so great. I have a line in my house. It started with COVID, when I just kind of became we need to be in the moment. So if we need to deal with this today, it's today. If it's for tomorrow, I'm not dealing with it. So it just kind of came from COVID, but it's trickled into this line I give my teenagers. Is this 11 o'clock worthy? And I wish I could make it 10:30, 10 worthy. Like, do you need to discuss this, talk about this, engage in this at 10 o'clock tonight? Or can we make some time tomorrow? Because I totally want to schmooze with you, but I have to go to bed because your little sister needs me up at 6 a.m. So there is this different dynamic of teenagers who will come in later, who make just their schedule. Like, my boys are in yeshiva till late, so I want to be available for them. And so, I've worked with many clients on like that adjustment, raising two different, ages and stages at different times, and who am I giving what to when someone needs to have this deep discussion and someone's in the middle of being toilet trained. So like, yikes, where am I going first? And I love what you said also, and it's just such a big part of the work in general that I do in the acceptance model on what you're going through in life. But your children, these are mine. I need to accept them for who they are, love them, and accept them with all the intricacies that come. And then the one added thing I would say, and this is children in general, but for sure teenagers, I stopped working with teenagers when mine became teenagers, but I was working with teens for 20 years. And the number one thing they would say is, my parents don't understand me. Why don't my parents understand me? Because when I go to talk to them, they want to solve, they want to fix. And the counteracting of that is called empathy, which we all know and we all hear about. But empathy is the ability, I'm going to take off my shoes. I know those like cute, slip-ons, and I'm going to put on his sneakers or her really cool, whatever she's wearing. And I'm going to just like, what is she going through? What is he going through? What is he saying to me? What does he want to convey to me? And so that empathy, when I interact with a child with empathy and when I can teach, and I always say, don't feel bad. If you were not raised with an empathetic parent, you will have to learn this. Plenty of people are learning how to be empathetic. What is it like to get in what's going on with them? And the reactions, the responses, and the relationship just looks very different when I could be like, oh, okay, I'm in it with you. I can get it. I can see it. I can respond differently.
And just figuring out how to give each kid individual attention. I think that's something people with multiple children struggle with. Is the next stage child leaving home?
Yeah.
Before marrying off a child?
Either kids leaving the house, right, for seminary or yeshivas, and then also kids getting married. And again, that separation that a parent and child, talking to parents here, will experience can really throw people off, right? Like who's talking about, are we having a support group for all moms sending their girls to seminary? No, we are not. But it's hard. It's really hard. That girl that really helped you in the house, that one you relied on. I just recently heard the sweetest thing from a friend, and this is also the adjustment of marrying off a child, whether you had a really close relationship with them and now, oh, daughter-in-law, son-in-law, oh, I have to relate to someone else. I have to share my child with someone else now. The worries. And I think as parents, anxiety 101, we will always have worries. There will always be concerns. There will always be those thoughts in any age and stage. And then the worries of like your child's being okay in their marriage and how they're doing and what's going on with them. And she was so sweet. I was recently talking to someone. She goes, like, she was talking about her son who recently got married. She was like, my best friend. I feel like I lost my best friend. It was so sweet. And you could tell she had just like a really great relationship. And so how am I, and I'll use this word in my work, and we could use it all along. How do I recalibrate when I'm going through a shift, when I'm going through an adjustment in my life, in my relationship? I need to recalibrate, right? So when someone comes in falling apart in any of these stages that we're talking about, I'll help people recalibrate. How do I bring myself down, ground myself, look what's working, look what's not working? Could be a job shift, could be a career change, could be a friendship that's not working. And all of those places, there's room to what I call recalibrate.
If I could add different language to this, it'd be an identity, reinventing your identity every time there's a new transition. And I would say the biggest, well, being single, then being married, I would say that's a big identity shift. But I remember after I had my baby, and I had a baby, it's not like I had a loss. I remember thinking, I'm not pregnant anymore. I'm not a pregnant person anymore. I can't pull that I'm pregnant. Like, give me this, give me that. And that was something that it was hard to let go of. But then you're someone with a baby, so you get slack cut for that. But figuring out like, oh, my time's not my time anymore, or my job's not the most important thing anymore. I have to prioritize other people's jobs, needs, appointments, schedules above my own. And then you go through the same shift on the other end when your children leave. It's like, don't you have a life? Stop calling me ma, right? Or I can imagine that's the flip of it. So you have all these women who are starting new careers when they're empty nesting because they need to put their energy, everything they had to put on the back burner. Now they have to readjust again, and they have to relearn how to live life again and change their identity again. And I would call it not a life crisis, but it potentially could be a crisis at every point. Oh no, what do I do now? How do I do it? And why does it feel so unsettling every time? And why do I have to keep doing this every couple of years or whatever it is?
And so there's just one thing I said that I want to like caution to, and I think, I don't know if it's just built into a Jewish woman, if it's just something cultural happens, the pressure of that women do put the needs of others before themselves. And you wanted to bring up burnout. Now's a good time. It's something I work with so many women on in my practice and with friends and even personally, that, you know, when we go on an airplane and they doing the safety talk, they'll say, put your oxygen mask on first and then your child's. And I'm like, what? My child's going to suffocate. Of course I'm going to put theirs on first. But no, I will not be breathing if I'm trying to help this child. And I'll look at that and teach a lot of clients that oxygen is your self-care, your self-necessities, being able to put yourself first, because the burnout happens so clearly. I could see it in a second when moms, parents, couples are not, and dads, let's include all the dads here too, are not being able to fill some of their needs or take care of themselves. So if someone's walking around like really erect, I'll be like, hey, and like my clients will know my line, what'd you do for yourself this week? What'd you do for yourself this week? Where did you fill your energy tank? Because if I go through my day and I'll make this line like, by 2 p.m., moms all over the world are on empty. And so what did I do? What am I doing? And so I personally am a runner. My running fills my energy tank, keeps my anxiety down. It fills my energy tank. And my family knows mom needs to get her run in. So my husband's schedule and my kids this, and I'm like, guys, I'm going for a run. They're like, okay, Ema needs her run. And so that's just important for me. And it could be coffee with a friend. And I always say, I never like to impose the same thing, what people's self-care. And I'll use the word self-necessity because self-care can be like, oh, la-di-da.
Get your nails done.
It could be you are a person who needs to get their nails done every week. And that is a self-necessity. A massage, coffee, going out with friends, a nap, a hot bath. There's no shortage of how I do what I do for myself. I was just talking to a friend last night, and she's like, I'm just so wiped out. I'm like, what can you do for yourself? She's like, yeah, I took a walk and I'm going to get a hot tea. I'm like, great. And I always say, when you're setting the intention that I'm filling my energy tank, it is so much more powerful. You actually feel like you have more energy.
So that may work, but then there's burnout on a bigger level. On one hand, it could be something bigger than giving up a run or a meal when you're giving up something you want to pursue in life, like another degree or a job promotion that you can't take because of your responsibility, or even going on a trip with adults only and not having bedtime and dinner time and just like the everyday burnout from your everyday routine. And you might need to step away, and it might be impossible for years.
And so I think it's so important that we give permission. And what does step away look like? And what does it look like to hold space for my role as this caregiver, this mother, needing to do all this? But also, if someone has nothing, then I would be really worried. Something that there's their own, a project, a hobby, a passion, a career, any of those things are really important for women to have. And then permission to step away in whatever that looks like, not give up, but permission to, there are plenty of girls who go on girls' trips these days. Like, people are like, wow, what is that? Well, maybe they just need a girlfriend trip. Or couples that really work hard to schedule couples vacations. People will look at me like, you do that? I'm like, I'm a big advocate of couples going away and families going away. And not always all these things possible, but really checking in with yourself if you're losing sight of, like you said, whatever that feels like. That word identity gets thrown around with, but what feels good for me, what feels truthful to me, what feels right for me. And different places in your life, there will be those recalibrating and shifting and what's working, what's not. But a lot of women do come in like so overwhelmed because probably they weren't taking care of themselves or not, or finding space for what fulfills them on a more personal level.
I'm somebody who, what's the word? I undertake self-care, whatever it is, the self-development, whatever I need. I'm also suffering from burnout. Like, I don't think doing all these things is enough. You still burn out because you're doing the same thing again and again and again and again.
And then when that happens, what can you do? Can you talk it through with a therapist? Can you reach out to a friend who's probably going through the same thing? Can you talk to your husband and get more help? Like, there will need to be a pause. Something's not working if I'm continuously feeling burnt out. So that burnout is going to come, but then what am I doing about it? Whoa, this is not good.
I guess we're trained to just push through. Because and right now I was specifically thinking when I was talking about my burnout is the podcast, the work that I do. It just feels a lot of the same, and it gets less exciting, and that turns into an obligation, turns into that burnout feel. How do you get out of that? Always thinking of what to do, though. It's more interesting. What's the next thing? Pushing through.
And I think it's great that you could do that. And I think women go through that. That's also just something we don't talk enough about. Is what I'm doing right now fulfilling me along with the very busy life I lead? So thank God I've been working a lot lately, and people are like, you're working too much, you're working too hard. I'm like, I like what I do. It's hard for me to say, no, you're suffering from infertility, don't come in. Like, no, come in, I'll make space for you, I'll make time. But I have to balance that with my other obligations, the other things in my life.
There's one more stage of life that I wanted to address is the sandwich generation / caring for elderly parents, and the combination of taking care of kids and parents. That's its own challenge. But can we talk about how people may not be prepared for that?
Yes, let's talk about that. I think it's so important. And so many people I work with and myself like are in that stage of like, you're still raising all these beautiful young kids, maybe starting to marry off people. And depending on your dynamic in the family, there are many who become the caretaker of their parents. And it can happen very suddenly by a medical condition, something happens, a sudden death, and then they turn from, wait a second, now I have to be there for my parents in a way I was never there for them. Or it can happen very gradually and slowly with the same, an illness, aging, or like more serious things like dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, things that just kind of like slowly come on, and medical, just aging. And so holding both of those, being pulled, and that's what like I always hear that description, being pulled. I have to turn and be here, coordinate. Potentially you're the coordinator in your family, you're the medical person in your family, you've now become the financial person in your family, to be taking care of these aging parents or more serious medical conditions, and still being, wait, I gotta get to carpool. The bus is coming, or I'm in the middle of planning a wedding. And it's a really big, again, talk about that energy. It's like another thing that's being taken away. And so the same idea of getting support is just critical. And is that support from, sometimes is, sometimes isn't, from the other siblings, right? And I'll always encourage people, where are your siblings in this? Who else? And just by default, from what my experience has shown, it's always one child who ends up being the main
Primary
one, whether it's birth order, whether it's eldest daughter, whether it's actually a technical living situation. And so being able to access your siblings, even if you're the main one, and being able to say, I need some help here, I need to divvy this up a little bit, and not being totally, and this again is in talking about kind of regular, hopefully getting along families. Anything else? Those are other topics you can have on your podcast as well. But being able to really do that, just be able to ask for help a little bit more and be able to be there. And then for friends as well, friends who are going through the same thing can really be support to each other.
Any closing remarks as we wrap up?
So I think one thing I would say is like in any of these transitions, in any of these, times that we're recalibrating, I think so many people are going through it. And when we can be open about it, when we can be vulnerable to a friend, to a family member, when we can get support from a therapist, whatever that looks like, when we can talk about it, there isn't a sense of like, I'm less alone. I'm not going through this alone. Your partner, for sure, your partner, like through all these things, I just want to reiterate that your partner is your number one. Hopefully that we did start that solid foundation and that you're there for each other and that you could talk things through. And so, I think that number one quote unquote piece of advice is just talk about it. When we hold things in, when we feel like we're the only one, it definitely, it can almost breed depression. Like, I'm the only one, something's wrong with me, I can't deal, I can't handle. But when I can talk about it and just get validation, like the other day, I'm like, oh my gosh, parenting's so hard. And my friend's like, parenting's so hard. Like, and then that was it. There was such a relief. I'm like, okay, parenting's like, that was it, and like, I could go through the details with her, or I couldn't, but like, knowing that these things are all very normal transitions that could have bumps, difficulties, hard times, and any shift is going to have that in our lives.
There's so much to say. One thing I'll comment is one of the points Abigail Shrier brings up in her book called Bad Therapy. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, But she says
Yeah.
half of the problem is the ruminating. So like asking yourself, like, how are you feeling? Or parenting so hard. Let's talk about it. Let me bring it up again. Let's talk about it. Then you end up ruminating, and maybe your partner, your spouse was in a great mood, and now you're both depressed and so upset about it, when maybe not talking about it would have kept at least one of the parents more cheerful.
Yeah, you have to be careful, I think, just in general, that like worries, fears, rumination don't get too much. So there's space for both. Finding, the partner may not be the person to support you, maybe your friend is, or, sometimes people come into my office like, I fall apart every time I come in here. I'm like, well, you're holding on to a lot during the week. You're holding it together. And now we're talking about all that stuff that you're holding on to. So I definitely think there needs to be space for both, of giving space and acknowledgement and a lot of empathy, but also solution-based therapy. What am I doing? Where am I getting the help? What's my next step? How am I getting better? Whatever that looks like.
What's your least favorite thing about your job, your career?
I wish I did have more time in the day, that I could do like more. I mean, I stopped many years ago, nights and weekends. So I'm really, I'm on my kids' school schedule now, thank God. But I guess it takes up a lot of emotional space for me as well. And so like at the end of the day, when I was just sitting with clients all day, it wasn't just sitting with clients. I'll feel the drain. And I wish I could kind of do something, talk about filling my energy tank, just be there, drop more for my kids, be a bit more present. So it's a privilege, the work I do, to be in a space of holding people's pain, exploring, supporting women through this, infertility and loss and postpartum. It's a privilege to do the work. But yeah, sometimes it's heavy.
Thank you so much, Chanie. I really appreciate you sharing your time and your knowledge with us.
Thank you for having me on, and continue to do your great work spreading. This is how we break the stigmas and get things, the help, just by talking about it. So thanks so much.